We have the incredible Thomas Park from BDC Capital. First of all, I want to say that BDC stood up and really helped us reach our goal of our last event. We did a hardware tech event. It wasn't like, hey, what's in it for us? Or hey, like at the end of the day, we raised enough money to provide 15 laptops for kids that need them in the Regent Park area. So Thomas, I want to thank you for your support on that. And I'd love you to introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about, what you do, who you are, and let's jump right into it. Let's talk about hardware technology.
Yeah. So thanks for having me, Zach. It's really exciting. So let's see a bit about our fund. We're the BDC Deep Tech Fund. So we're part of the Business Development Bank of Canada. So that's a Crown corporation. That's a bank for entrepreneurs. Primarily does lending to small businesses, but it also is the most active venture capital investor in the country. So it has about $5 billion in assets under management, invests in over 200 Canadian venture capital funds, but also has a number of funds that invest directly into companies. So we're one of them. So we're the BDC Deep Tech Fund. We're a $200 million fund that invests in early stage Canadian startups with higher technical risks. So think of semiconductors, think of quantum computing, think of foundational AI. So things that take a longer time horizon for commercialization.
Very exciting. Do you want to tell me a little bit about some of the companies in your portfolio and what they're doing currently?
Yeah. So, one of our favorite companies, Xanadu. So it's a local champion here in Toronto. What they're doing is they are a photonics-based quantum computing company. So the problem is that a lot of quantum computing companies like PsiQuantum and such, what their issue is the architecture. So if you want a computer that actually solves regular problems, like any kind of problems, like with computers we use now, you would need a quantum computer almost the size of a football field. Mm-hmm. Like IonQ is just this massive amount of machinery, whereas with Xanadu, it would be a lot smaller. And such as you can actually, it could, one person joke, it could fit into an iPhone one day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure Christian would say that. So that's one exciting one we're really excited about.
Cool. Yeah. Just even on talking on that space. And firstly, it's so exciting that we have one of those companies because I look into them and I think they're one of the 4 that are working on that specific field in quantum computing, if I'm correct. And like, I'm pretty sure there's definitely one in Asia. I think definitely one in the US. I want to say the other one's in Australia, but I'm not right. But the fact that we've got one in Canada, I think is really, really exciting. So that's really awesome. Awesome. What other companies are you guys into?
We have Darwin AI. So that's a Waterloo AI startup. So what they do is that's founded by Alex Wong, who's like an outstanding AI researcher at the University of Waterloo. And what they do is they use some very interesting AI. They were using Gen AI before it became hot.
Yeah.
And what they do is that when it comes to PC board manufacturing, so think if you open up your phone or whatever, you'll see these circuit boards. When you manufacture them, there's always quality issues. So it literally is somebody has to look at it. So they automate that. So that's a very difficult AI problem to actually look at something and find defects and how to know how to find the defects. There's a lot of noise with like when it looks at imaging and like lights and such, but they found a way to crack it.
Wow.
And not only to train the algorithm, but they have an algorithm that will train other algorithms to be more accurate given different settings. So,
and do you have ideas of some certain applications that company is going to be moving into the future?
Yeah. So some of the co-investors include Honeywell and Lockheed that really work on some of the advanced electronics. So anything with advanced electronics, so usually these circuit boards, they're like, it's a big demand for it, especially with like the big onshoring demand. There's a huge spike in demand for electronics.
Yeah.
And there's like a big surge in manufacturing demand because of onshoring. So you can't hire enough quality assurance people. So
yeah, very exciting. And one of the companies that came to showcase, Hapley Robotics, I'd love to hear your take on them and talk a little bit about that company. And that's a very special one in my mind.
Yeah, well, Hapley is a very cool company. So it's a haptic company. So haptics meaning like, haptic technology, think when your phone like buzzes. Mm-hmm. So think when your phone shakes or your PlayStation 5, there's some resistance and such because of the electronics and such. That's essentially what Hapley does is they found a really cool way. They got this cool joystick where you can, for example, train to be a surgeon. Surgeons have to do training, but you can feel the appropriate level of resistance. So you can feel
like an arm or a bone or that company to me really stood out. I was really excited when your team was able to source them to come up to the event because again, like, maybe in the future there's a kid that's sick in China and the only doctor can operate is in Toronto. So like, how would you do that? Like, obviously we're not doing that tomorrow, but these companies are very special because it's where they're going to go. And I think I was saying before we started recording, I saw a video of this company in year one, long before they met you guys, and like to see it, what it was looked like then, to see it at the event. They're really special people, those guys. And I think the whole team should be so proud of themselves with what they're doing. It's really cool. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other companies you?
So we got Happily. A good one is Info.
Okay.
So formerly known as Elphic. So what you have, like, you have these servers, right? So you think of like the cloud servers like Amazon and such. The thing is, like, to connect the different boards, you often use wire, which actually could slow things down. So they use a photonics-based wiring that will accelerate.
Wow.
Yeah, that would accelerate the processing by magnitudes, right? So it's fascinating. So what's interesting about Ottawa is, I think it's because of Nortel. It used to be back in the 90s, telecoms was the Gen AI of today. That's how hot the telecoms communication industry was. And so Ottawa always had a strong spike in telecom, communication, and photonics-based technology.
Interesting.
So that's a great example of one.
Interesting. And what kind of applications could those be used for? Like, I'm assuming improve lines of communication, get access to information quicker, or am I kind of off on that?
No, not at all. So think of 5G technology,
okay.
Think of IoT. Like, I think, right now we focus so much on the applications, especially on the consumer side.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the transformation now, especially given where the maturity of the technologies, could be on the manufacturing and the industrial side.
Okay.
Stuff that's in your car, stuff that's in the factory. Like, how do they all connect?
Interesting. Other companies as well that's in the fund? You feel free to just list them all off.
There's a lot. We have about 10, 11 companies. One's on stealth mode. One of them was Augmenta AI. So that's a Gen AI startup. So what they do is they focus on design part in the architectural space. So, you design a building and then you got to map out the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. But the moment someone says, hey, I want to raise the roof by a foot, everyone's got to change their plans.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to actually draw out the plans done by hand. You got to optimize hundreds of variables. So this does it automatically. It uses like a bunch of inputs and it will automatically, using AI, to kind of generate the electrical plans, the electrical wirings, where the nodes, where's the outlets and such. So where should it go?
So excited. I mean, I really hope that you guys understand that, like, the work that you're doing, like, look, there's real estate, and real estate's fun. I'm not saying real estate's not fun. Like, there's other applications too of investment, but like, I really think that it's special that you guys are so focusing on it. And I'd love you to talk more about the fund, the deep tech fund specifically, strategy, and what their goals kind of are. Not even so much financially, but kind of the companies and what their strategy really is to be successful.
Yeah. So I would say, our fund, we're comfortable with high technical risk, but we tend to look for low commercial risk, in the sense that there's a real pain point in the industry and people are willing to pay for it, and the existing technology is not ready, like semiconductors.
Okay.
Right. So, we talk about the limits of Moore's law and such. So, and people are trying to find ways around that. And so what's interesting, like in Canada, we're very good at chip design. Mm-hmm. Like you think of Tenstorrent, you think of Untether and such. And this is a big, so semiconductors is a core part of our investment, kind of the investment focus areas, because Canada is actually quite strong in compound semiconductors. So rather than just a silicon-based, not just, but a silicon-based chip, we put in all these other components that's really tailored for a particular application. Mm-hmm. So Untether is about AI algorithms, training and running those algorithms. You think like ChatGPT 4, right? Like what OpenAI did, Sam Altman was saying they had spent $100 million just paying the cloud servers to train the model. Yeah. So there's a huge demand in terms of augmenting the processing capability. So that's why there's a lot of interest in chips.
Yeah.
And so our fund's early stage. So we look at seed Series A. That's kind of our sweet spot. And so that also means with a $200 million fund, we have high reserves. So that means that we have enough capital set aside to kind of be a follow-on. Because Zach, like hardware, it's a tough slog.
It's not as easy to get in as software, right?
Yeah,
like
you can't change. It's very hard to change, right? Yeah. It's very sticky. So there's always like bumps on the road for a hardware company. And so the idea is that we would have capital to keep being there when they raise money.
Yeah. Step aside from the money, I think one of the things, and I took this amazing, again, I have a marketing background. We run a creative agency, but I took this awesome course, just like basic level, like private equity funds and everything like that. And you talked about like, what do companies look for in a fund? Can you speak a little bit more, like aside from the financing and the fact that you can continue going on, a little bit more about the expertise of the team and kind of how you necessarily mentor? Like, would you say that that's the type of fund that you are, or do you kind of let the founders do what they want, or are you kind of guiding them and helping them, with advice and such also?
Yeah, so great question. So I think we offer three things, right? I have amazing partners working with me. Like I have a good friend of mine, one of my good friends as a partner. It's nice to work with him. Is Charles. We had worked at McKinsey together for a number of years, and so he's just in terms of understanding industries, the financial modeling rounds, especially investments, understanding industries. He kind of has like a tier one investment background. We have my friend Duncan Stewart I met years ago. He's like our in terms of understanding science, breakthrough science. He's the guy. Spent 10 years at the National Research Council of Canada, 10 years at Hewlett Packard's labs in Silicon Valley.
Oh, exciting!
One of those guys. So I often ask, like, why am I here? Well, I'm a guy with a network, right? So I spent over a decade overseas. So,
that's so exciting.
So I know a lot of the corporates. I know a lot of the corporates, potential clients, and I work a lot very closely with our founders. So that's another thing. But
that's
our
exciting.
fun, is that we work closely with our founders, but more like a supportive role. Investment from a VC is like a marriage.
Yeah.
Right, because we're there for at least 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And we own a piece of the company, so you have to find a way to get along.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So,
yeah. And there's like how many people on the earth, right? Like everyone's different. It's real. You have to have a lot of emotional intelligence of like to do something like that. Yeah. No, very, very exciting. Again, I think we talk to a lot of startups, right? Like, but we're like, we run the Journey and that's like a founder community, and a lot of them are like, should we raise? Like, it just comes up in conversation. Not that they're coming to us for advice, but I always say, I'm like, look, money's good, money's nice, but I think that you really should look for people that, were maybe ex-founders in that industry or, have some experience in it, because what you just said was exactly right. If you take a company like Happily, Tom will introduce you to 3 people, and then Kat will introduce you to a couple people. Like it doesn't, you put this company leagues ahead. I think information is just as important, in my opinion, if not maybe more than just the finance of a lot of it too. So I'm happy to hear that you guys take that role, and I'm happy to hear you guys also take a very respectful bound to it as well. I've heard nightmare stories of like, guys who or people who have taken VC capital, and like the company they work at is not the same company in a year from now, and like they have a lot of time stomaching it, and but it's a cutthroat business in some aspects of it. I want to talk a little bit about developments in AI, and a lot of people are saying like this is very good for software tech, and because it is more on the deep tech software side. But I really do believe in the people that I talk to that it is going to definitely have an impact on hardware. What is BDC, during that time period? What was your fund kind of looking at or talking about or thinking about? Can you take me back to that? And, I'd love to hear more about the ideas coming from your party.
So with AI, we spent a lot of time with AI. We look at the value chain of AI, and you can look at the public market valuations, and they're giving you an indication of where they think the value is. So it used to be, a few years, you think of apps, right? And you think of different algorithms and such, and this is a cool algorithm, et cetera, et cetera. Then OpenAI just kept, and Meta and the others and Google, they just kept pushing all of these platforms open source. So it came to be that unless you had a unique data set that no one else could have, your off-the-shelf algorithm is not really a sustained differentiation. And that's important, because the moment you're out as a startup and you're gaining traction, someone will start a company to compete against you, and their starting point is your latest innovation. They don't start back to where you were 10 years ago. Their starting point is where you are at now, because it's open source. Yeah, and they're smart enough to reverse engineer. So back to AI. So with with the transformers and such, what's interesting is we see a lot of the values primarily in the hardware space. So you look at NVIDIA and how well they're doing. You look at Amazon, Microsoft, how well they're doing. And so we see it's for an AI startup that's pure software. The first thing we're going to ask is, well, what's your algorithm data? What's your algorithm based off? Oh, OpenAI.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay. Yeah, Neuron's going to start a company next week.
Right. It's like, well, what do you do? And I'll do it as well. How do you train it? I use synthetic data. Oh, I'll just do that as well too. Where else did you get your algorithm? Oh, I licensed off a Hugging Face. they trained it, and I have a data set. So we're going to ask all these questions. So on the software side, it's easier, but it's going to be tougher questions these days. Whereas on this hardware side, that's where a lot of the value is being captured. Like we read a report, like 30 to 40% of the total revenue in AI is primarily captured by these hardware players.
So exciting.
Yeah, the NVIDIAs and the servers, people own the servers because it costs a lot of money to train.
Yeah, and it's also like, hey, like I know there was that thing with Reddit, right? They're like, yo, we're starting to realize that our data is a little. Do you remember that story with Reddit? They increased. Remember Reddit was like on strike, so they increased the price of third-party apps to use Reddit. Right, because they realized that like, hey, our data here can be used to train models. Am I right, Nerd? Is that like more or less what happened? Yeah. So definitely people are starting to come there, but I think it is very exciting to when you think about like where it's going to go with hardware and the chips and everything like that. I'm curious. Like again, this is much more personal for me. I'm trying to think, like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I actually do remember someone's like, yo, check this out. Like, and he like sent me like chat, like, you know, like the app and stuff. I think it was on the browser. And they're like, you know, tell it to write like a story about like medieval times or like we were talking about how applications for school. I remember a lot of my friends are like high school teachers and they're talking about like, yo, the kids are starting to like do this thing where they're writing their essays. But I'm curious if like when you came across it, you're like the first time you like learned about it, maybe it was like before it got big. I'm sure it probably was, but I'd love to hear your thoughts when you like saw what do we call this AI? This is like a communication type tool, or what would you call chat GPT? It's generative AI.
Oh, like a Gen AI. Yeah.
I'd love to hear like your story. Just like, you know, if this is like, I think the fun probably would have just been starting off probably when you heard it, maybe.
Yeah. So we were focused a lot on, because the underlying technology is the transformer technology, right? Where they can run these kinds of algorithms, right? That really take these kind of large data sets and start making, you know, generate this for me rather than is this a cat or not a cat? Like make a cat, make a cat image, make a cat video. So we were looking at this for a while. ChatGPT-4 is very good at capturing the imagination, but it's going to be hard for it to actually be deployed in the consumer and enterprise side for two reasons. I think one is that institutional change is very hard at large companies. And two, a lot of these algorithms rely on data that, frankly speaking, doesn't exist. Like the data within companies will take a long time to clean up. It doesn't mean like, you know, look at, you know, the neural nets and deep learning models. They're starting to actually be useful. Yeah. Right. People are starting to use them now. And that's actually what's really interesting to me. But on the Gen AI, it'll take a time on the enterprise level, but we're going to see a lot more. So in terms of making money, we see more in the upstream, whereas downstream, unless you have a unique data set, and the data, most people don't have the right data.
Cool. I want to jump back to the fund as we begin to wrap up. We have some fun questions after as well about the event, but I'm curious, we're in year 2 of the fund. What is the next, I think, 8 years look like? Is it a 10-year fund?
Yeah. So we are a 12-year fund.
12-year fund, okay.
Yeah. So we're here by year 3, year 4. Yeah, year 3. We're at 10 companies invested. We got 10 more to do. Ooh. Yeah, and but we write little checks. So what that means is that we stay close to our companies, making sure that we're scaling them. We always keep a very high reserve ratio to make sure that we're able to keep writing them a check as they need help. Yeah. And so what it looks like is really thinking about sharpening our value add. So one pain point is that, you know, a lot of Canadian chip startups, they don't have access to a foundry. So it's hard to do a tape out, tape ins. Like it's hard to like send your plans out to a foundry, get back like a prototype chip. So how do we start cementing? We have some relationship with some of these foundries. How do we make it stronger relationship so we can start making sure that the Canadian startups are on top of the queue? Yeah. Interesting. I like that you said that you like give it piece by piece. I think that's what you just said, right? You're not just going to drop like a mill, you know, to the company or whatever. And that's so important because these founders need to learn how to manage the money really like effectively. I mean, our business, right? Like we're a creative agency. So we had a client that paid us $300. Then we had a client that paid us $3,000. Now we've got like 30,000 and hopefully we get to the 300 mark. Right. But my point is that like, it's so important, especially with the companies that take investment about how they manage that money and making every dollar count. Right. It's like you have a lot of risk when you've made that dollar. So I think that's really exciting. And I like that you guys said that. And I like that you guys practice that. I want to talk a little bit about the hardware tech event and some companies that you saw. You know, you're kind of like a hard tech connoisseur, if you will. What companies stood out to you? You know, if you want to talk a little about them, share your thoughts
thoughts? I
Well,
think
there
that'd be
was
so
like
exciting.
we saw a bunch. We've seen a lot of the hardware companies before, and they were just really well done, Zach, to you and team for putting a great event. So some that stood out. Let's see. There was Applied Brain ABR.
Yep.
I mean, Chris Smith is a brilliant researcher
Yes.
from,
Yes.
and his neuromorphic chip design is just brilliant.
Yeah.
Love just like that is really cutting
Yes.
edge deep tech. Happily, of course, because it's a portfolio company. What else? There's like Ponto Sense, like great sensors in their cars.
Yeah.
Really much needed. So I'm just trying to think back to the event. There was the robot delivery. It was like the delivery.
Yeah. Let me get into all of them, and I'll pick your brain on what you think of them. I want to highlight Pontosense because, again, like this guy, like first of all, he wasn't able to show up, unfortunately, but he sent his team and he sent one tech he had to show off. But they're doing some really incredible work there, in my opinion, being able to apply these to the cars, and no one gets up in the morning and for the application at least that we talked about. I know there's other applications, but no one plans to get up in the morning and like lose their kid to like a hot car. So I think that having companies like these are so incredible because, again, this is what drove us to do it. It's like if he didn't have this idea, like it's like the application, the lives that they save. It's very exciting stuff. Did you see Ready Tech? At the corner, Ready Tech, they were so it's so funny. Like we have so many 3D printing companies, and like, what do we do with like this stuff that we don't need anymore? So Denon, the CEO of Ready Tech, has a device where you can get your film back, right, of the 3D printer. Yeah, so we have a lot of interesting companies like that as well. Did you like acrylic? That was a fun one.
Acrylic, remind me.
The robot that painted.
It's crazy how imaginative and creative and technically smart people are in this country.
So I'm just like, I'm at the event and I'm like, I'm schmoozing with people, I'm talking to people, and like out of the corner of my eye, I just like see the robot painting, right? It's like between someone's arm, right? Like between two, and it's like, who gets up in the morning and they're like, so the CEO, her name is Chloe Ryan. She's like incredibly brilliant, but I think that there's some application there in terms of where it can go as well. I mean, if it can paint, it can definitely do other things. Yeah, there was what else was there in there that stood out to you? Yeah. Happily. But overall, I think that we want to continue doing these events for 3 reasons. Number one, first and foremost, like obviously, like you can do these events and like do it for a good cause, right? So again, thank you again for your support and being like we did 15 laptops to kids that need them, and like everybody wins. If you like look at it, like the kids win, number one, the sponsors win because they get to talk to people, the hardware founders win, the attendees win, like everybody wins, and it's good for everybody. So it's a really great event like that. But number two, we truly believe that like me and my business partner, we met at a networking event. I interrupted him as he was doing a videography thing, and now we have a business, and right, like things happen in the universe where you kind of go on paths. So what our thoughts were like, okay, what if we put like 20 to 25 hardware tech founders, like let's just get them shaking hands. Like they're smart enough to figure it out themselves, and that's kind of what we banked on. So Mitch DeBora, he meets X, Y, and Z, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like maybe they're working on a company in the next 3 years, right? So you never know. And then lastly, I think it's important that we really highlight hardware because it's very easy to do a software event. It's like it's very easy. Like all you have to do is like bring companies. There's nothing to really showcase except for a computer screen. But the moment you bring in the hardware aspect of it, I think a lot of people enjoy it. So we plan on doing it every year. We plan on continuously reaching our goal. For me, we want to be able to fill up this wall with laptops, and I think it's doable within the next 10 years, right? And definitely pushing the companies. So I want to thank you again for coming on.
No, my pleasure. No, it was a fantastic event, and I will say that what was nice about the event is trying to change a culture that slowly changed Canada, where a lot of founders, they would kind of hold back sharing their ideas. If you go to Silicon Valley, you know exactly what everybody's doing. Like right now, I'm working on this and I've got this side hustle, because they want to keep advertising to see if something sticks. Mm-hmm. That's smart. Whereas here we kind of hold back stuff. Like what's nice about that hardware event, it's starting to build a community that needs building. Like the software side is getting a bit better, but hardware stuff, it's like, this is great.
So we had a buddy, so Shiraz, he's ex-SpaceX. He helped us put this event. He's the CEO of ProcureStack. They do like procurement for companies. Like he was really into procurement at SpaceX. So he's like, to hell with it. I'm going to create my own company, and I really like the space, and like I learned a lot. So he's been applying that, and he said to me, he was where at SpaceX, and he was at Tesla before, and he said in the communities in the States, like they're so well connected, but in Canada, it's like some of them are in Waterloo, some of them are in Montreal, some of them are in Ottawa, a lot are in Toronto. look, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not moving to Toronto. It's not happening, but we can all stay connected, whether it's a Slack community or whether it's X, Y, and Z, right? That's the journey of the entrepreneurship. But it was really great to have you guys. And I also hope maybe you would appreciate that. Like, we really wanted to stay away from an event that was like, let's sit down and do like a panel. Right. Like, let's make it super interactive because these people, like, they're smart enough to like figure it out themselves. Right.
Everyone's tired of panels.
Everyone's tired of
but
panels. People
people like meeting new people.
So that's the whole thing about our events. Like, what we believe is like, it's almost offensive to like bring somebody and like make them like sit for like an hour as opposed to like let them meet like 9 different people.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for coming on. You're an incredible, and I wish you the best of luck with the fund. And, I hope to actually have you on again next year and talk about what's gone on in the last year. And it would be great to have you. But
my
thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Congrats on a
Thank
great
you.
event.
Thank you.